Welcome back, pop culture nerds. Today we're excited to welcome one of our favorite actors, lending his talents to Fallout 3, Avatar: The Last Airbender, Star Wars: The Old Republic, and Netflix's The Dragon Prince. In his spare time, he can be found spreading love across Twitter. We welcome Erik Todd Dellums.
Hello. It's great to be here.
Erik, how we doing?
Or as Three Dog would say, ow!
Yes! Starting with Three Dog early, I love it.
Yeah. we had to mention Twitter because almost every time I log on, I'm either seeing the share love, hashtag, or I'm seeing you singing or performing from your car, which is great. So
you can tell I love having Sirius XM in the car. I literally flipping channels all the time, and it's like, oh my god, I gotta jam to this one, and try not to crash, but
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely has a carpool karaoke kind of vibe, but I feel like you do a lot better than James Corden. So that's my take on that. But hey, so as far as being an actor goes, from what I remember reading is that you got started pretty early on, but so did your family as well. I mean, it sounded like you had an acting school kind of forming from your house.
Yeah, my mom actually got us into like children's theater as a kid. My two siblings and I. So yeah, we've been performing since we were little kids, and we always would say things, especially when you see a movie like Fame or something like that. Oh, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that. And then for some doggone reason, I decided, well, I actually am gonna do it. So and here I am. I just started off, on stage, and then it just went from there.
Well, nice, because didn't you actually have a pretty good talent for improv? Did that start with children's theater too?
What's funny is a woman named Sandy Ripley. She was our children's theater coach, and she used to always do something called a moment of improvisation. And so what she would do, I absolutely fell in love with it. She'd literally just give us a scene and just kind of say, go. We'd have one intention, you're on an airplane and the flight attendant says, I think we're going to crash. And so, there'd be 6 kids sitting on little chairs like we're in the rows, and I started just having a ball. And suddenly I realized, something, it was so liberating. It was so liberating to have and then as I started getting more into, real scripted pieces, I would suddenly find that if I had an opportunity to apply my improvisational skills, if I could really do an improv, that meant that I actually really knew the character, that I could literally take the character from any angle. It doesn't really work, doesn't work in a play, and sometimes it doesn't work on screen, because many times if I work with a writer director, then, the script becomes sort of that's their baby, that's their Bible. But many times directors will, they would love if something just came to mind and we went for it. I mean, for me, I think there's kind of a sense of danger that comes from improvisation. You're right on a cliff. You don't know where it's going. And, if you have a partner that actually wants to take that ride with you, then it's absolutely magical.
Yeah. That's awesome, actually, to hear, because we've heard of a couple of different actors that are specifically working in video games that have kind of called on that same track. It's it's hard for us to really test this limit, because then either through production we have to send it back to another studio, and then they get back to us, and that can take weeks. Or there's always a complication there. But just in terms of improv, though, I love hearing about it, because Joe and I both live in Wisconsin. We're just north of Second City, out of Chicago.
Oh, there you go.
And so improv life, I wouldn't say it's permeated outside of that organization into our state, but I feel like we do a lot of improv on the show.
There you go.
It's it leads to some interesting
but
things.
I mean,
fortunately,
the thing about Fallout, it was the first video game I'd ever worked on, so I had no idea if I was breaking the rules. But the sound engineer, Michael Lampert, he actually would just start laughing. So I kept saying, oh, God, I should not have done that. He's going to scream, cut. I laughed over the thing. And then he would just say, oh, I love that, But he says, okay, well, it's a video game, so we've got to do it now. We got to, now you've got to do it and pretend like this character is a female. I go, oh, okay. And then I have to sit around going like, what the hell did I just do a second ago? So you've got to keep track of your improvs. The fun part about Three Dog was, so much of the dialogue I could literally just run with because they would have like huge chunks. And I have no clue where it was going. And the beauty of it was that there were some moments that were so touching in that. And for me, those were actually the moments that I actually enjoyed playing the most, were the moments where you could actually see his genuine concern for the Vault Boy, and suddenly I could start visualizing what it would be like to sort of be the voice out there in the middle of something, of course, now we've gone through our own pandemic, but the voice out there when you are, as we were in this pandemic, stuck at home or uncertain or afraid. And suddenly I started to say, something, now I understand why Three Dog really resonates with people. Because once you actually get a chance to play the game, it helps you to have, to know that there's somebody there, no matter how stressful the game is to play. You can just say, I'm going to go to GNR, maybe there'll be a nice soothing song that'll play. Something, Three Dog will say something funny. I mean, you have a companion that's there. And that's something, growing up, I used to love. That's how I fell in love with radio, was when there were DJs that I could, shows that I couldn't wait to listen to, because I love music, but I also love just the way some of these DJs would literally be your companion on this journey. And, so it was really almost an honor for me to play that character.
This is something I've mentioned on the show before that I it wasn't personal. The first time I played Fallout 3, I did not actually follow the path that you're supposed to take to get to GNR.
Right.
So I actually went just out into the desert. I had no idea what I was doing. And I found my dad that way. And so it ended up skipping the entire GNR sequence. And so when I was hearing Three Dog on the radio, I'm going, how does he know I'm doing that? I've never met this man. He's talking to me like he knows me. I obviously played this game probably a good 700-800 hours. And so the next time I was like, I'm going to follow that quest because I need to actually meet Three Dog.
Oh, right
so then I went through that and it felt like a brand new game because there's this whole other angle that now I suddenly believe and understand. And so his voice, I really do resonate with that too, because he's kind of, if you do want to be a good character, by the way, which is one of those plot choices in the game. I mean, Three Dog is sitting there encouraging you to keep going and to keep doing good in the world. And so I think you just need that reminder.
Yeah.
It's good to have him there.
It's true. And look, the genius too is that soundtrack. Absolute genius.
Yes.
Absolute genius. It really is something about kind of tapping into the emotions that come from like the American songbook or what have you, that really just makes it a more profound journey. And something about stripping away at the world because of an apocalypse and the whole 9 yards. And suddenly even your music, it sort of takes you back to pre-synthesizers, all this other kind of stuff, to this kind of, more of sort of this holistic way that we as Americans really kind of built our music, these love songs, these, these rock and roll pieces. I mean, it was just really, really just beautiful.
Yeah. Not to mention, I always love it when you've got the 4-piece music ensemble and then they get to the bass guy at the end. and I'm like, that dude's waiting to shoot his shot. He's got to wait like 2 minutes into every song, but then he gets it. But he gets it.
That's right. Exactly.
So now, Eric, you did say that Fallout was like your first video game voice acting experience. So give us a little bit of a bridge, because we went from childhood acting and improv into adult Eric doing video games. So how did we go from point A to point B? What were some of your...
What's funny was when I had just started college, my freshman year, the summer after my freshman year, my mom was actually looking in the newspaper, and she said, so they're casting a movie locally here in Washington. It'll be shooting. I said, my brother sister and I said, what the heck? We'll just go down there. I said, I won't be able to shoot. I got to go back to school anyway. So I went down there. Oddly enough, I got the role, and it was playing this drug addict, member of this gang. And they were shooting the film locally here in Washington. And then I wound up having to take a semester in Washington. I was going to work on Capitol Hill to earn some more money to go back to school. So I was like, first I was depressed. I'm not going to be able to go to school. But I was like, wait a minute, I've got this film to do. And so that was my first cinematic experience, which was really fantastic. That brought me into sort of I met some New Yorkers there, and that brought me sort of up into like the New York scene, some of the art scene, the hip hop scene, things that were going on there. But I wound up pursuing, doing more acting work when I was in college. Once I graduated, then I went to New York and then left New York and went to Los Angeles. And what's funny is I did some pieces. I did a couple of pieces with Spike Lee, and I did like this Oliver Stone film. Yeah. And then like the bottom fell out. There was like nothing going on. And so I moved back to Washington. I had all of this student loans to pay off, the whole 9 yards. And then a buddy of mine called and said, I'm directing the show Homicide in Baltimore. I'd love for you to come down and read for it. And I told him, I said, well, I no longer act. I'm like working as a paralegal in this law firm. I may go to law school. I've got debts to pay. He said, oh, come on, Eric. You want to be an actor. And I said, no. So then he called my mom and said, I want Eric to come up. So my mom, said, Eric, you're going to the audition. You can be late for work. But I got on the train, went to Baltimore, and I had like my suit on. I'm working in a law firm in this long trench and this long coat because it was freezing cold in Baltimore. And I went in there actually just to read for one scene. And I'm literally leaving. I'm hugging my friend saying, I'm so glad to see you. And then he looked at me as I was walking out and he said, I want you to read this other character. And it was the drug lord Luther Mahoney. He said, it's this drug lord. And I said, well, nobody will cast me as a drug lord. So let me just put this on tape right now. Did it, got on the train. By the time I got to the law firm, NBC said I had the role. Wow. And suddenly I'm, within like 3 days, I've got to go back to Baltimore and shoot this drug dealer. It's just supposed to be one episode. Very exciting. Then I was going to go back to my life. The character was insanely popular. And David Simon and Tom Fontana just kept bringing Luther Mahoney back and bringing him back. And we get fan mail. And it was just huge. And I was so excited. And they were entertaining the idea of making my character a regular on the show, being sort of this foil that these cops could not get to. But NBC demanded that my character be killed off at the end of the season. They said, we bought a show about cops, not a show about criminals. And so they literally overruled David Simon and Tom Fontana, and they had to literally kill the character off. They did not want to do it. So they killed my character off, which was really sad. Then David had this idea. He said, I'm going to bring on his sister. And I want you to play his sister on the show. And I literally said, I'm going to win a friggin' Emmy. Yes. And NBC said, hell no. And cast a woman to play the role. But anyway, Luther got me back into Homicide, got me back into, it's like the mafia. They brought me back in and suddenly I'm acting. And it was actually a fan of my character on Homicide, Aaron Ehas, who was working for Riot Games. He was working for Avatar: The Last Airbender. And he said, Luther is my favorite drug lord. I want you to do this animated thing on this kid show. And I said, now, how the heck are we going from drug lord to a kid show? And it was to be, code the face stealer. And I went down to Georgetown in Washington and just recorded and had a ball. I mean, I had not used my voice, had not an opportunity to play with my voice since I was a DJ in college. And I just loved it. I loved every bit of doing the voice acting. And then Aaron left there to go to Riot Games and brought me in to do League of Legends. And I did Nasus on League of Legends. Wow. and three. I had done Three Dog. No, I had done Three Dog first, and then I did those other two.
Mm-hmm.
And next thing I know, I'm in that game. And and unfortunately, I had some health concerns, and so I wound up having to stay here in Washington, and so I could really spend time concentrating on my voice work. And so I wound up doing a lot of narration for like Discovery Channel and Science Channel, and became like the voice, all these outer space adventures and NASA's unexplained files and all that kind of stuff. And I love doing that kind of stuff too. So I was sort of doing that. And then Aaron, who had me do League of Legends, brought me back in to do what I'm doing now with Dragon Prince. And Star Wars just came about literally from an audition. I had no clue. I was just like, something, it would be so much fun to be anything in a Star Wars. And and then I got the part of Arkin, and that's sort of like the gift that keeps giving. I mean, every 6 months or so, the character will change, and they'll say, well, we've got you doing this romance. Can you come in to do whatever? So I just find my Arkin voice and do them. And, the Dragon Prince has been fun. That's 7 seasons. And we've actually already voiced all 7 seasons. And season 5 starts airing in the summer. In the summer. So we have seasons 5, 6, and 7 coming. And as quiet as kept, we're hoping that Netflix loved it so much that they'll keep bringing it back in. And I have a phenomenal role on that show. Aaravos is a character.
I say, if it's anything like Homicide, even if like your character were to die off, there's a good chance that they'd want you back anyway. Which makes me think that had you come back from the sister, how many times do you think they would have killed like your character and then brought you back because of how much they love you?
Be a real soap opera then. And then the whole thing's just a dream, and Luther's actually a cop and just wanted to be a crook in his dreams, But it was just a blast.
See, now I did want to ask you about Homicide for a second, because I got this presence from you watching. I've been able to watch a few episodes of the show, and looking back at you on that, you have this. I mean, obviously you're intimidating as a character, right? You're one of the biggest drug lords, but the way that you carry dialogue, it's almost like your teeth almost don't quite move, right? You're almost like how are you doing? It's like the presence that you have in that character is just crazy, off the charts, like intimidating to me, and I loved watching it. But did you find that presence on your own? I mean, what was it like becoming that character?
I had no idea how to really work my way through this character, and so I literally said to myself, there are actors whose work I absolutely adore. Anthony Hopkins, Christopher Walken, Morgan Freeman. There are certain characters I just said to myself, I said, you know something? I think if I can sort of find the playful joy, sort of be the cat that is always kind of toying with the mouse, then I can sort of find humor in the fact that I'm always smarter than the person that I'm opposite. And I can just play. And to me, I thought that was absolutely more terrifying for someone to know that, something, I can outthink you in this moment. You're going to move this way, but don't worry, I'm already 5 steps ahead, and I'm also surrounded by all of this muscle behind me. But my brain is actually bigger and far more dangerous than all of this muscle here. And so I just started to have fun. And if you'll notice, I play with my voice in that character a lot. There were moments where literally I would whisper as I'm talking. And so the sound person would literally be like leaning in. He'd have the mic over my head, like leaning in. He kept saying, oh my God, wow, where did that come from? And I said, I said, I don't know. He asked me, like, are you smart? And I just said, I'm smart. And people would just say, wow. And the interrogation scene was so much fun. I mean, that is an actor's dream. It's an actor's dream to play one of those sequences and not really know where they're going. And see, Clark Johnson, who's actually one of my closest friends, he is an improv junkie too. And so as soon as we got into that room together, I knew, all dialogue is getting tossed out of the window. These are going to be 2 actors that are just going to play. And we had a friggin' ball. Oh my God. We had a ball. doing that. And so much of Luther actually was
Mhm.
pure improvisation. It was, a brilliantly written character, but things would just come and these writers are so astute. They are so tough, and and their egos are so strong that if something works, then they just say, okay, let's move on. If it doesn't work, then you just go back and stick to this dialogue. But the other genius that I got a chance to work with was a man named David Milch, and he was the head writer for NYPD Blue. And a producer for that. Extraordinarily brilliant guy. I also did Deadwood for HBO. And I got a chance to play a transsexual hooker on NYPD Blue. And what was amazing was the role was written as a transvestite. So we shot, I was a transvestite when we shot the character in New York. But as he was working with me or whatever, he decided that no, by the time we flew out to Los Angeles to do all of our interior scenes, that the character had undergone a sex change. And so it was like I was two different people. I worked the streets of New York, which was fun, being like this 7-foot tall hooker and his heels and the whole bit. But by the time we got in there, I'm reading this dialogue. I'm like, oh my God. This character is literally fresh from having sexual transition surgery and is being interrogated. And it's all of this stuff going on. It was literally the most extraordinary role I ever had a chance to play. And David Milch was literally writing it on the fly. He would write just dialogue in his trailer and just, here, take it, shoot it. And we were like, I have no time to even work this stuff. I just sit there and just kind of glance down and we just have to go. And it was so powerful. And it tested me. It tested all of the gifts that I have and brought out gifts I didn't even know I had. And the voice of the character, everything just came just from, the power of this writer's words. Really remarkable piece. And so once again, I had to play with my voice. And suddenly all of my characters, in a movie for HBO I did called Boycott, my character has this kind of English accent. And then I have this kind of quasi-English and not quite sure what kind of freakazoid this guy is when this terrifying character I played on the show Homeland. But I always, using my voice has always been, one of the prime ways for me to get inside of a character. And so, voice acting has just been a real gift. I just, all of it has to be conveyed in how you vocalize.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's especially you touched on your role in Avatar: The Last Airbender. That is, if you haven't seen this scene, like it is Eric playing with his voice like so incredibly well, because one, Ko the face stealer, incredibly creepy, and that what you had mentioned how your character in Homicide was always kind of almost playing with the victim because he's always one step ahead, thinking things here. I got that same vibe off of Ko the face stealer in this scene. So you did an awesome job, like bringing this incredibly creepy looking character, even creepy sounding, to life.
Oh, thank you. I can still remember recording that. And Aaron, the head writer, head producer, he said, "Did you just say evil?" And I said, "Yeah, I've always wanted to say evil." That just felt so good. Evil. I had so much fun doing that character. So much fun,
You portrayed this almost Cheshire Cat if it was placed in like a horror movie, right?
Right,
like
that's
the presence that Ko kind of brings. But even if I'm not watching the animation and I just hear the performance itself, as Joe kind of mentioned with pulling a little bit from the Luther character, it's like I can feel the changes, almost like like weather changing, right? Like the atmosphere is different based on your statement. And obviously in this scene, you're trying to elicit a response by scaring someone, right? Or trying to disturb them enough to make their face change. And it works. It works brilliantly.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
it's crazy though. Writers.
Well, hold on a second though. There's one thing I want to point out about Luther that I don't feel like was a writer decision. Your character is active listening in the middle of the bar sequence where it's really tense and you're exchanging words and you're active listening that entire time, because this is a character who, clearly commands respect. But when I watched it, I'm looking at you and I'm in sales by trade, right? When I see active listening, I call it out, and you were active listening that entire time, which I think makes the character that much stronger.
Oh, right on, brother.
Yeah. It was crazy. I was watching this going like, he's like nodding. He's affirming these statements, even though they're kind of talking trash in this bar.
Oh yeah.
But,
yeah,
it was crazy. So I'm not going to give the writers credit for that. I'm giving that to you.
Well,
that's just fantastic.
I will take that, my brother. I will, and I will thank you for that too.
Well, we do have a fan question we wanted to ask you,
Sure.
which this changes from performer to performer, and so we wanted to ask you specifically: do you have any advice for actors that are starting from an earlier age, and what would you recommend to them getting started in their journey?
Well, I always think an actor really does need to spend some time working on a stage. I think it is incredibly important to get the discipline that it takes to actually perform a theater piece on stage. The interesting thing about theater is that obviously you are taking the exact same dialogue, the exact same scene, and you're working it over and over and over again. But the power of it is how do you make that scene organic and alive every single time you have a chance to perform it? So you're not just reciting lines. And it helps you with your concentration to find all of these different ways to make a scene feel as if you're living it in that moment, right then and there. Just, and it's a really good discipline for actors. I also think that trying to find some kind of improvisation class is very important, because I think those two things will give you confidence in your auditions and the whole 9 yards. Because one thing that I think actors don't really realize many times when they're auditioning is that auditions can change on a dime. You can literally, you have no idea what a casting director wants until you walk into the room. You could walk into the room, be completely prepared for what's it called, and someone would say, "Oh my God, that's Billy Button. Billy Button just forget what's in your. I want you to take this into the bathroom and read this." And you're sitting there going, "God, I spent 2 weeks working on Jane Smith, and I've got Billy Button lines in here. But you'll have the confidence to kind of pause and just live in that moment to bring them what they need. So those things are important. You've got to have some sense of training. I mean, you don't have to go to schools for long periods of time. You don't have to be in a graduate program, but it pays to have an acting coach, to be in some kind of acting class, and have that acting class also, not just teach you on the stage, but also to teach you improvisation as well. Then you obviously need to be in a place where you actually can use your craft. I mean, you've got to get out there and do it. I don't recommend for anybody just say, I only be an actor, so let me just, get the last bus to Los Angeles, because everybody and their mother's a friggin' actor. Your dentist is a screenwriter or an actor or, struggling somebody. So I think New York and LA are really places when you have really reached a point where you're really strong in your craft and you have that alligator skin that you're going to need to deal with rejection the whole 9 yards. So find a place where you can actually use your craft. If it's a community theater, if it's if it's a school, if it's local theater, what have you, do that. If voice is your whole thing, I mean, now thanks to computers and YouTube and the whole 9 yards, heck, get yourself some equipment, learn how to use the equipment, and just start playing. Start playing with your voice. If that means doing some DJ stuff, if that means doing some TikTok videos, the whole 9 yards. I mean, you've got to find some way to use the gift that you have. And you can't really wait around until somebody just discovers that you have this gift. You've got to literally do like you guys are doing right now. And you got to find, if someone all of a sudden said, something, why don't we take what we have right here, right to Sirius XM? You guys have done the work. You guys have the,
Yeah.
you see what I'm saying? You guys have done it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you have the comfort zone. You have the whole 9 yards. You have that skill. You have the camaraderie. You know how to work a show. So get yourself out there and get in there. Start doing it. I have a lot of people that say, I really want to voice video games, and I'm like, look at them and say, I want to voice video games. And I've voiced video games, but I still want to voice video games. So I tell them, something, you've got to start playing with your voice. You've got to start. If you have a gift for impersonations and the whole 9 yards, if you could suddenly do like 15 different voices, well, damn it, get them on tape. Let the world know you can do all of these different voices, and be cocky enough to get that tape out there, to get that stuff out there, or be cocky enough to play with those voices and put it on YouTube or put it on do whatever you got to do. You have to have that kind of confidence, and find the skill, find the improvisational skill, so that you'll be able to be free, and then find a place where you can actually do the work. And then once you feel like you've got what it takes, then you can pursue agents and all that other kind of stuff in Los Angeles and New York and the whole 9 yards. So much stuff. But for voices, heck, you can do your voices. I do them out of my closet. You can do all that stuff from anywhere in the world. So if voice is what you want to do, then start playing with it. You can even voice video game characters from your home. Start playing around with it.
Yeah.
Get online and start finding out those places that say this is unpaid, but we want to hear your tape, or just submit yourself there. You can do it.
I see that kind of brings us to where I know Mark is most looking forward to hear from you. Granted, like, we've been gushing over your roles to this point so far, but again, just the influence that Three Dog has had on our lives as gamers. This was something that I think we talked a little bit before we got started here, how this was actually a role that you had no idea you were either auditioning for or that you were or that you'd get on top of that.
Yeah, it was very odd. The whole gaming industry is so mysterious, and I understand why. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it takes a long time to get a game together. Mm-hmm. Very short period of time to voice a game compared to all of the artwork and stuff that goes in there, all of the writing, all this kind of stuff. So it's very important for them to be secretive. It's so competitive out there, and we don't want anybody to know what's going on. It was also very important for it to be secretive because obviously this was number 3 in a very popular series. So, I had no clue. The agent that submitted me on the project had no clue. They just knew it was going to be a video game. The interesting thing was I didn't even know that. I know that I got a role, but I didn't know what anything was until I literally walked in the building. And it's so funny. You're signing all these papers. And the funny thing about, looking around, Bethesda software is all of a sudden you start to see all these posters. You're like, oh my God, you guys did that. So, you're a freaking fan as you walk in. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh my God, you geek out like crazy. And then next thing you know, you're sitting down and there's like a stack of stuff in front of you and it's dialogue. And they're not telling you, funny thing is, even after you record your dialogue, they don't even tell you the project's name or anything. Mm-hmm. Oh, and it's one of those things that if I had played Fallout, if I had been, a 12-year-old geeky kid, I would have sat there and just been the whole time going like, I'm going to be in Fallout. I know what this is. I didn't know what I was reading. I knew it was a DJ and I knew I could howl. And every time I would come up with something, I'd say, was that too far over the top? Oh, no, go for it. And I just started to have a lot of fun playing with that character. Like, hello, things would just happen. And suddenly I would say, oh, that's the character. The voice just kind of came to me as I was, I didn't even know where it was going. And then I got kind of pissed off because I said, why did I do something that was so hard on my vocal cords? If I had known I was going to be working for 14 hours, I would have found something that was just, right in my range. But instead, I'm just thinking I'm going to be here for about 3 hours, so I'm just going to shoot the moon. And we had 800 lines of dialogue to do. I'm like, huh? And it was so brutal. but the payoff was so great. I mean, to the point where I worked on Skyrim, and that was just for a couple days, and it was a piece of cake compared to playing. Suddenly I was just like, that's all there is. You don't want me to do more than this? I mean, come on now. What did frustrate me was, I must admit, I spoke with someone over at Bethesda, and they said, "Hey, Eric, we may be seeing you soon. They may be bringing Free Dog back." And I said, "Really?" Ooh. And I had just gotten on Twitter, had no idea how powerful Twitter was, and then I put out this tweet going like, "We may whatever it was, like we may see Free Dog, whatever." Anyway, whatever, it went viral, and it was insane. Then, I heard from, Todd at Bethesda. I mean, everybody came down on me like a ton of bricks. And I didn't even really know what to do. I was just like, guys, I didn't know that I was kind of violating any rules. And then I had to be really quiet about everything. And then to break my heart, they didn't even use me in the game. I mean, I didn't have to be Three Dog, but I sure as heck wanted to be one of the voices in that game. But, part of me thinks that, that they kind of pushed me to the curb because I think I kind of broke an unwritten rule. And unfortunately, the rule was unwritten. I mean, I would not have said a word. I would have never gotten on Twitter to say anything. But suddenly I had like a zillion people follow me on. I mean, I finally had to get off Twitter because, I wasn't even part of the game, and I really just got really depressed. And then by the time I came back on Twitter, I had like, one follower. It's like my mom. And I'm starting from scratch. But I kind of tiptoe around Bethesda now, and every now and again I'll give a call and say, sure would love to, if there's anything there, I'll sign an NDA and come back. But nothing thus far, but you never know.
I mean, I kind of always hope you can put your foot back into the door there. And getting back to how you said that you had 14 hours and 800 lines as Three Dog.
Oh, it was crazy.
Now, there's no way all of that made it into the game. Was there anything that got cut that you would have liked to have seen? I can't even remember.
All I know is so many of the lines made it into the game, and they were so hilarious. I mean, I'm perfectly honest, I think a lot of Three Dog stuff actually did make it in the game. They kind of chopped a lot of things up. But a lot, I mean, when I say enter the lines, trust me, some of them were just like 2 words. So a lot of that character, a lot of that stuff did make it into the game. There's no way I can remember all the stuff that didn't, though.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine. I can't remember what the heck I did like last week, let alone being able to remember that many things offhand. So it actually brings us to a fan question here. Is there any element of physicality to Three Dog when you recorded him in the booths for Shoddycast?
Well,
and what kind of physical presence do you bring to him?
Well, what's weird is oddly enough, now that I am more secure in my voice acting, all of my narrative work I do seated. I usually put like some kind of back brace on because I always want to have really good posture, and I sit, and I can literally find the resonance in my voice, and it's very comfortable there. But I cannot act without standing. I can't do it. But with Three Dog, since it was this video game, I was seated the whole time. And so it was really, that made it actually even tougher on my voice because I couldn't really put anything physical into it. I had to do everything had to come right from the vocal cords. And I really wish I had an opportunity to have found a way to physically do that character. Now, I mean, I'm all over the place. I mean, when I do the Dragon Prince now, it is so much fun. I mean, if they would actually film it, I'm acting my butt off in that studio. I'm doing all this other kind of stuff, and it's done. By the time you walk out of there, you're just out of breath, and you feel like you just did a great play. But with Three Dog, unfortunately, I was seated the whole time.
Ooh.
Yeah, rough.
Yeah, we've seen it a couple different ways too, because physicality is a big part of certain actors' styles in the booth, and sometimes it's it's just hand gestures, right? You never really know what it could be. And so I was interested to hear your take on it, because when I look back at the behind the scenes of like Fallout 3, for example, this was really before I think gaming documentaries made sure to capture all that
Sure.
as you were making it, and so always wanted to know what you're up to in the booth, man. Just curious.
Yeah. I mean, I love voice acting. I mean, I actually get more excited when I'm going to be doing voice acting than I do. And that to me is the greatest joy now, because, you get a chance to really play. I mean, one thing I've never had the opportunity to do is actually voice with somebody else in the same booth. Sometimes on like Dragon Prince, whatever, the entire cast is in Canada and I'm in Washington, D.C. So a lot of times these folks would get to do like with the Simpsons and have someone standing right here and someone doing that, doing like that kind of stuff. I unfortunately, and what's funny is I actually don't listen to anybody else's voice when I'm actually doing the character. And it's truly bizarre, because, even with Code, the whole 9 yards, I didn't even hear, I don't listen. Sometimes they want to do playback and you're acting opposite the playback. That to me is actually, it's too odd of a feeling to me. It's like almost like I'm having a telephone.
Yeah.
It's like a telephone call.
Yeah.
And so it's easier for me to actually imagine the other person in my head, and and keep that kind of pace, because I have a very cinematic head, so I've got music going in my brain, and I can kind of visualize where we're going with this. And then when I actually sit down and watch, I'm like, my God, I was right on point. I knew it was going to make it swell, and I want to bring them in right here, and it's oh my God, I want to do like a Godfather game now. I want to be like down here. Come on. I think Hollywood is really sleeping on me. I can do a lot of friggin' voices, and it kind of pisses me off. I mean, thing I love about like Star Wars is, I play Arkin, and then I play his twin brother. But the fun part is I play a lot of little characters in that thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun. Like they'll come in there and say, would you be willing to do the shopkeeper or do this little boy? I mean, I get a chance to, all of a sudden I'm up in here and I'm talking and I'm doing it. And they're just howling. They'll say, they'll never know that was you. And I said, oh, come on, we're talking and I'm doing. I mean, you get a chance to just be all of these people, which reminds me of my Fallout audition. I had voices all over the place. I was, doing all of these wacky ass characters. And then, and it just so happens that they chose the DJ. I literally thought they were going to pick somebody else, because I had some really hilarious, talking up in here, all these kind of weird things and sinister voices. And I said, wow, they chose this one. Interesting. And a friend of mine actually got one of the other characters. I can't remember who it was that I played, but his character, I thought was actually, my character was much, much more exciting to play. I had such fun playing my character.
Yeah. And it actually kind of brings us to something about Star Wars specifically, because the additional voices concept, we've seen this a couple times in video game productions, and I wanted to know, is that if that's how it always ends up being? Do you just get into the booth, you're done with your stuff, and they go, hey, do you want to try this? Or is that built into like your contract? I mean, how does that usually go for you?
It just happens. I think many times they'll find actors like I, who they know loves to do voices, and they know that I love to play around, so that they know I'm just that kind of guy. So I think when they find those actors who, I come in and I'll be playing around with voices, and then all of a sudden they end up, they say, something, Eric, we add a little something at the end of this. Want to know what you think about so and so, and they know it's going to be fun for me. I don't care if it's an additional $5. It's I feel like a real actor when I get a chance to do those kinds of things. And to create a character right on the spot is so exciting. It is so exciting. And for someone to just, 9 times out of 10, either I'm being terrifying, which I can do, or really funny, which I can do. So either way, I'm going to get like this approbation that's going to be just off the chain. They're going to say, holy moly. And then, so I always leave the booth going, boy, I'm a genius.
Hey, with the level of improv that you have and seeing just how you've used your voice in the productions that I've had a chance play and watch myself, your range is incredible, because when I was watching, going back and watching some of the Dragon Prince, my son and I have watched that series together,
Oh, it's a wonderful
and
show.
it's fantastic. And as you've talked about, having that theatrical mind, Aaravos, to me, it had to be a hard headspace to get in, but once you're there, I imagine it's really fun, because Aaravos as a character it feels like he's constantly just covered in like oil or grease. You're never going to catch him. You're never going to get to touch him.
Sure.
He plays all angles. And I know a lot of folks say that he kind of sees the larger game, right? Not just the immediate actions that you're taking. Right.
Sure.
And so as far as headspace goes for a character like that, I mean, what kind of preparation did you do to get into, get into Aaravos and kind of breaking that down for us?
Interesting. What I love is that the way that it's written, they're really only giving you just enough. They don't want to take you through, this was not one of those stories where, let me tell you where we're headed in season 7. They only wanted me to know exactly where I was going in season 4 or where I was going in season 5. And so the beauty of that is that the character was getting the layers of the character were getting built. And I see exactly why they were doing that, especially with my character, because trust me, when you get to season 6 and 7, I mean, I am not fooling. I already told them, I said, you guys, I'm submitting myself for an Emmy for these. No, the emotional territory that this character goes into, I mean, especially like the end of season 6 and all of season 7 is just insane. It is so, it is so powerful. And for me as an actor to have an opportunity to open the show as the narrator is Aaravos narrating the show. But to now I almost wish I could go back to, I'm so proud of the way that narration came out, because now that I know the character, it all makes perfect sense. All makes perfect sense why he is the perfect voice to tell the overarching story to all of these people. It's very powerful. To get into that space, there are certain things that you do as an actor, that kind of through lines where you just say, okay, there's isolation. So, you find a way to be isolated, and, you find a way to be distant. The beautiful part of, suddenly it works for me. I'm the only one that's in Washington, D.C. I don't know any of the other cast. Everything that I'm doing is very, very much as if I am stuck in that mirror. I know none of these people, and I have to kind of address the world just as Aaravos would. You don't really know me, and I get a chance to actually reveal as much or as little as I want in that character. And I love that, because that's the way Aaron writes. I'm not the kind of person that they'll send me a script and I say, well, what do you think? And I said, well, I didn't read it. You said, you didn't read the script? I said, no, I want to do, each of these lines is going to happen. I'm going to live it for the first time right as we record this. And they said, really? At every one of those lines, I say, I live it for the first time right as we record. And it's really, it makes it so exciting that I'll flip the page and say, oh my God, we're going here? Ooh, 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 oh, right. And it's very powerful. I think you and your son are going to so love where this story goes. It's very powerful. Very powerful.
I remember when we were watching, because we did a bit of a marathon. We didn't catch it right when it came out, but we were going back and watching multiple seasons. And as we're watching it, I'm thinking to myself, like, was the narrator lying to me at one point? Because then we're like going back and going, wait a second, that was really familiar. So then we went back and listened to that episode, and we're like, huh, okay, now I'm getting a feel for this, and so that's why I think the setup and the execution of Aaravos is perfect, because it's almost like it's like basically somebody took the Joker and turned him into like a fantasy presence, right?
Sure.
And except I'm expecting that we're going to get all the motivations as you've alluded to. But that's what I think I love so much, is that his motivations you never quite know, but you still get to see all these different angles of him. One moment you're laughing with him and you're feeling that humor, and then the next moment your eyes get wide and you're like, oh, I just saw some shit.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So yeah, characters that can do that, and then the weight you bring to his voice is fantastic.
Oh,
and
thank you.
It keeps me in it. It keeps me in it. I don't know of many people who can responsibly do that role, and I choose that word carefully.
Yeah, and Mark is right when you say responsibly doing the role, because I think you've created probably one of the most likable villains on TV ever here. And so, like, how does that work for you? Like, that had to present like different challenges as opposed to other people who are almost like, outright villains, as opposed to as to Aaravos here, who's very, very much layered. So how is he like challenged you in ways that other roles haven't?
I, the thing is, what's amazing is, I don't think people realize, when you actually get a chance to physically act a part, just how important your clothes are, the way you walk, the way you sit, the way you talk, the way you move your hands, and having somebody else's eyes, to look into someone else's eyes and respond directly to what energy that they're bringing to you. How important that is as an actor. The challenges for Aaravos is, I've got to be able to do all of that using my own mind's eye. I have to literally, if I'm eliciting some kind of if I'm toying with someone, if I'm eliciting a response of fear, if I am being compassionate, if I'm doing all these kind of things, I have to literally create these eyes. I have to create these responses. I have to see, if I am literally toying with someone, if I'm being a puppet master in this, and I have to be able to see how it is, how the things that I'm doing are actually affecting someone, and and it's all in your mind's eye. It's all in the head. That's the difficult thing, and that's the challenge. It always surprises me when someone says to me, like, I really love, you're so bad, but I really love your character. You're so, and then I tell people, I say, I don't know how else to play a character. I literally can't play, if I'm going to try to seduce you, whether I'm good, bad, or ugly. I mean, I would prefer, I want you to like me. It's even more terrifying if you like me and I am a horrible person. But it's more of a challenge for me to actually kind of play a motivation of, you're just, good, bad, or ugly. For me, I've got to believe everything. I've got to be as charismatic as I can in delivering the way that I do, and then then the chips fall where they may. I have no idea how it's going to happen. I had no idea that Aaravos was going to be so incredibly attractive. I was kind of blown away when I saw the character. I was like, oh my god,
handsome man.
I think this is the first time I actually have had people like really lusting after me, and it's not even me. But I'm like, oh my god, they're really like, oh daddy, they're thirsty. And I'm like, I'm jealous of that. I'm like, then I said, Eric, it's not you, baby. They like the voice, but I just it's all of it is exciting and challenging, and if anyone has this as a dream, I say, you know what, if you believe in yourself, you have to go for it, because the few times that you actually get a chance to really do what you love, it makes it all just worthwhile. And that's the way you got to live your life. You live your life when you get these Aaravoses, then they come around. You get these Luthers, you get these three dogs. They come around, and I mean, I've been really fortunate. I've had some really incredible characters to play. Not a lot of characters, but they've been really incredible people, really interesting people to bring to life, physically or just using my voice. Really interesting ones. I don't get many dull characters. And, God kind of blessed me with this voice that I think can't really exist doing, I don't make a lot of money because I can't sell prescriptions. I can't seem to get those jobs to sell that, that diabetes pills or whatever it is. But if it's the roles that I do get though, I was really born to play them. So that's been a real gift.
Yeah, I was going to say, with the roles you've gotten, some people will ask whether it's more important to be feared or loved. But with you, Eric, we're afraid of how much we just love you and what you do. Because what you bring to the table is incredible, man.
I appreciate it. You guys are great.